Seeing someone else win should feel good, but sometimes it doesn't. Something in you tightens. You wouldn't call it anything, but something is definitely there. It could be a post, a promotion, a new business, a better body, a stronger marriage. And instead of just noticing it, you feel it. A shift, a tension you can't put your finger on, but you recognize it. Because on the surface, you're not that guy. You support people, you want others to succeed. So why does someone else's win disrupt you? It's easy to label this as comparison. That's what most people do. Stop comparing yourself, stay in your lane, focus on your own journey. But that advice doesn't actually solve anything, because comparison isn't the problem. Comparison is a signal. The real issue is actually deeper. What you're feeling is a lack of clarity in who you are and what actually defines you. Most men build their identity the same way, gradually, through performance, through roles, through what works. You become the reliable one, the provider, the one who figures things out, the one people depend on. And over time, you don't just do those things, you become them. Now, here's where it gets dangerous, because when your identity is built on performance, it has to be maintained constantly without ever saying it out loud. And oftentimes without you even realizing it. So when you see another man succeed, it doesn't just register as information. It registers as a threat, not to your life, but to your identity. Because if he's winning in an area you've claimed, what does that say about you? If he's more disciplined, more respected, more successful, more present, more fulfilled, where does that leave you? And this right here, this is where the shift happens. And unfortunately, most men miss it. Your brain doesn't process this consciously. It processes it quickly. Before you think about it, you feel it. Because somewhere along the way, you built an equation for your life. And that is, my value equals how well I perform in the areas that matter. And for most men, those areas are clear. Work, money, strength, leadership, family. So when someone else shows up seemingly stronger in those areas, that equation doesn't feel as solid anymore. Here's an example. You've been disciplined in the gym for years. You take pride in it. It's part of who you are. Then someone shows up leaner, stronger, more consistent, and you don't say anything. You might even respect it. But something in you tightens, not because they did anything wrong, but because they got closer to something you've been using to define yourself. This is why it doesn't feel like simple comparison. It feels personal, because it is. And your body reacts before your mind can explain it. Tightness, restlessness, irritation, withdrawal, subtle judgment. Not because you're insecure in a shallow way, but because something deeper is being challenged. And there's a pattern behind this. In psychology, it's tied to something called identity stability. When your identity is externally reinforced, meaning it's built on outcomes, validation, and a comparison, it becomes fragile under pressure. Even if you look strong, even if you perform well. So instead of feeling grounded when you see someone else win, you feel disrupted because your identity isn't anchored, it's managed. And here's the part most men won't say out loud. You don't just want to win. You want to be the one who wins, not out of arrogance, but because it stabilizes you. Because if you're the one who's ahead, your identity feels secure, clear, justified. But when someone else steps into that space, especially someone close to you, it forces a question you've been avoiding. Who am I if I'm not ahead here? That question alone is what creates that tension. Now, most men deal with this one in one of three ways. They dismiss it, saying something like, good for him. But internally, they disconnect. They compete, silently trying to reclaim that position, or even worse, they withdraw. They stop engaging in the areas where they feel threatened. But none of those actually solve the problem, because the problem isn't the other man. The problem is what you've built your identity on. If your identity is built on being the strong one, what happens when someone stronger shows up? If it's built on being the disciplined one, What happens when someone more consistent appears? If it's built on being the successful one, what happens when someone surpasses you? You feel it because your identity has nowhere to land. This is why comparison hits hardest in the areas you care about most, not the areas you've released, the areas you've claimed. And here's where things start to shift, because the solution is not to stop comparing. The solution is to rebuild what your identity is anchored to. There's a difference between identity and assignment. Most men confuse the two. Assignment is what you do. Identity is who you are without it. If those two are fused, every change in performance feels like a change in who you are. But if they're separated, you can fully engage without being destabilized. This is where a deeper principle comes in, one that's been around long before modern psychology tried to explain it. Your identity was never meant to be earned. It was meant to be received, not based on outcomes, not based on comparison, not based on where you rank, but grounded in something that doesn't move. Because when your identity is anchored, other men's success doesn't threaten you. It clarifies you. You can see it without reacting. You can respect it without shrinking. You can learn from it without questioning your own value. And this is where most men finally experience something they've been chasing for years. Stability. Not the kind that comes from winning, the kind that remains when you're not. Because if your identity only feels strong when you're ahead, it's not strong. It's conditional, and conditions change. This is why some of the most outwardly successful men still feel internal tension, because they're constantly maintaining something that isn't actually secure. But when you stop tying your identity to performance, everything shifts. You still work, you still build, you still pursue growth, but now you're not doing it to prove who you are. You're doing it from who you are. And that's a completely different place to operate from, because now another man's success doesn't disrupt you. It becomes information. You can ask better questions. What can I learn? What do I respect about that? What aligns with where I'm actually called to focus, instead of where do I stand now? What does this mean about me? Am I falling behind? That shift is everything, because the real issue was never comparison. It was instability. And until that gets addressed, you'll keep feeling it in different ways, with different people, in different seasons. But once your identity is anchored, something powerful happens. You stop scanning, you stop measuring, you stop needing to be ahead, and you start leading, not from pressure, but from clarity. And that's the difference most men actually look for. They just don't realize it yet. If this resonates, there's probably more going on under the surface than you've been able to name. That's exactly where this work starts. If you want to go deeper in this, there's a link below to a free clarity call. No pressure, just a space to see what's actually going on clearly. Because once you see it clearly, you don't ignore it.